athlete, you'll die an athlete. It's in your DNA.
You're an athlete. Live like an athlete so that you can be successful in life.
You're an athlete. Live like it.
ANA, America needs athletes.
Welcome, athletes, into another episode of the Gym Closet. I'm here, as always, Amber.
What's up, guys?
And I'm Tyler Robinson. We are the founders of Krave Gym. If this is the first time listening to the Gym Closet podcast, it is a Krave Gym podcast. We talk about a lot of fundamental fitness things. We bust some myths on the internet crap that you might have to be shuffling through, unfortunately, in today's world. And so we're going to kind of bring those fitness facts, whether it's training like an athlete, like we're all about at Krave, but all of the things that help you dominate the sport of life, because that is our mission at Krave Gym. And so today we are going to cover some pretty simple fundamentals of nutrition. Last week we talked about some keys to fat loss. Today we're going to kind of extend on that topic. A few of these things were in those 10 keys, but we're going to talk about our macronutrients. So three nutrients that are really imperative to understanding and to knowing about when you're talking about performance nutrition. You know, if you do have a weight loss goal, a fat loss goal, then, you know, it's key to know these three nutrients. We're not going to dive into the micronutrients right now. In today's episode, we'll probably do that another time. But today we're going to talk about the macronutrients. And the three macronutrients are
Protein, fats, and carbs.
There we go.
That was my shining moment.
Yeah.
Podcast.
There you go. I love it. So yes, we're going to start. These three are what basically covers all. We have some others like alcohol, but we'll cover that another time.
That's a whole nother podcast episode.
Yes, but these are the three things that make up all of your food. And so these three things are what we talk about when we do our nutrition coaching. And so we'll plug our FTP group. We have an online nutrition coaching course that Amber's doing on a weekly basis for live videos right now. And inside of that course, you learn all about this stuff. But we also have one-on-one nutrition coaching. And this is what basically, our nutrition coaching is going to be a extended education and accountability on making sure that you know what you're supposed to be putting in your body and what you are putting in your body. And so we'll talk first today about protein.
Let's do
the
it.
Builder. So
the
protein.
One that's the hardest for people to get
all
the time.
I think this is the number one improved macronutrient that we have with athletes, because it's also the number one that most people lack in. It's tough to hit nutrition goals, and oftentimes I think a lot of our nutrition athletes don't know that they're supposed to be eating so much protein, and they also don't understand what foods are packed with protein and how much they have to have. So
let's be honest, like protein is not the good stuff unless you cook it right, but your carbs, your chips, your fats, I mean, peanut butter all day. So those are the easy ones to go to because they're more like they're there and they taste good. Versus protein, it's like you got to cook it right. You got to, and again, knowing what's in it is super important.
For sure. And I think the thing that makes it difficult is, of course, you know, if you accidentally just eat food that you love and that are high processed foods in today's world, you can really easily overshoot carbs and fats very easily. Protein, though, takes a little bit more preparation and a little bit more intention when you're eating protein. And the crazy part about it is when you do eat enough protein, oftentimes you're too full to overconsume in other areas. And so that's why it makes such a big difference. That's why we're talking about it. Number one is if you increase your protein to what you should be eating, a lot of times it fixes the entire equation. You know, if you're getting, what protein is amino acids is what it's broken down to, but we won't get into a whole bunch of the science behind it today. But what it basically does is it's the building blocks of your body. And so if you're building muscle, you have to have, I always say, you can't build a house without bricks, and that's the bricks of the house, right? I also like to use a is it metaphor?
Analogy.
Analogy. Yeah, I think analogy is the right word. I'm not an English major. That's for sure.
We have a lot of analogies.
Yes, and an analogy that I like to use for macros in general is just a car. And so protein is the car itself, the doors, the steering wheel, the seat, all of the building blocks of that car are made of protein, right? So our bodies are the car, obviously, in this analogy. So we have 4 calories in 1 gram of protein. So, and I'll actually back up a little bit. To understand macronutrients, a lot of times people are confused with calorie counting and macronutrients. If you do count your macronutrients, you are by default counting your calories, because no matter what, it's just the way that the world is. No matter how many different sources you get protein from, whatever the case might be, 4 calories is in 1 gram. And so if you're counting the number of grams, if I get 100 grams of protein, I'm automatically getting 400 calories. And so by default, calories is a good kind of umbrella thought process, but now the makeup of those calories are what we're going to be talking about today. And so the makeup of the calories that you eat and the different macronutrient, I've been having a hard time with words in the last couple of days, but the
like equations or like
all right, we're gonna work through this
groups. I don't know.
The fraction, if it's a fraction and the makeup of the
equation.
I'm struggling today.
I'm not much help.
So the different breakdown of calories, whatever it is, I'll figure it out in the middle of this podcast, and we'll report back when I can figure it out. But that is the biggest concern in most people's nutrition is protein, and so this building block is always the first time. So how do we calculate our protein? We're not going to dive in. There's a bunch of everybody's macronutrient needs depend on that individual. And so 99 people next to you are going to have different macro requirements than you, most likely, because it depends on body composition, depends on makeup, genetics, height, BMR. All of those things are calculated, and we do all of this for you if you're in one of our nutrition groups. But finding your macros is going to be the biggest thing, and we always find protein first. This is going to be the one that defaults that starts the equation of our macronutrients. And so what the easiest way to calculate your protein needs, and if this is the one thing that you take away from this podcast, just get your protein needs and start to try to hit that. But we want to try to make it super easy for beginners. We start with 1 gram of protein per lean body mass. And so what that means is if I am 240 pounds and then I take my body fat, and just for easy numbers, let's say that I'm 10% body fat. That means that I would have 24 pounds of fat on my body. So I take that 24 out, which leaves me 240 minus 24, which is 16, right? 216. Mm-hmm. So I would need 216 grams of protein every single day. So do that for you. All you need to do is find your weight, find your body fat, and once you find your body fat, it's going to be in a percentage. Take that percentage of your weight and then find your lean body mass. That is your number for protein, and that's going to be a lot higher for most of you than what you probably initially thought. Mm-hmm. Why don't you go over some popular foods and some different things. You're deep in FTP right now. What are some awesome protein snacks? We also have a whole podcast on Amber's favorite protein snacks. And so you can look back at that. We'll link that below. What are some of the food sources that would...
so eggs are a great one. What we get into with protein too, you guys, is we got to watch the fat. So some of these proteins that I'm talking about are higher fat. So I try to err on the caution of leaner meats. But like for eggs, for instance, if you notice your fat is constantly high, we can take the yolk out, which will bring that fat content down. So sometimes what I see is people start to increase their protein, but also their fat goes up because they're not watching their fat number too. So eggs are a great one. So I always encourage my athletes, start in the morning with eggs. There's Canadian bacon slices that Costco has that are awesome. Chicken, lean beef, tuna, beef sticks, again, depending on which ones you buy, watch the fat content, protein bars, light string cheese, your Greek yogurts. Those are just great ones to start with. But then, like I said, in FTP, we go over a lot more recipes when it comes to high protein and a lot more in-depth snacks on what you should be consuming.
Excellent. And I have to put this story in here because every time I talk about it, I'm like the egg guy. For anybody that ever hears this story, they always seem fascinated. And you'll back me up here, but every single morning to get my protein kicked off in the right way, I have a dozen eggs. Now, all 12 do not have yolks. So depending on where I'm at in my nutrition and how much fat I need that day, right now I'm doing like 2 yolks and 10 egg whites. All in the morning, just fry them up in a pan.
Those farm fresh eggs just going right down the drain.
Yep, they're perfect.
So disappointing.
Don't go down the drain. We actually put them in a slot
the
bucket. They go back to the chickens. They eat that, get more nutrients, and then provide more eggs for us. So it's a great circle of
Wasteful.
life.
You're so wasteful, but you're saving macros.
Definitely, yeah. I can't eat all of those fats because that would be a huge start of my day for fat. But I'm trying to start my day. That's roughly 50 grams of protein right when I wake up. And people hear that and they're like,
right, I'm just used to it.
I normally only eat an egg or 2 eggs at most. How do you do that? And so I think a tip for most people in their meat, their legumes, beans, those type of things, and like if you're a vegan, like tofu and those things, the best tip that we can give when it comes to protein is just double what you're eating right now. And that's typically going to be a good step in the right direction if it's your lean meat sources or all the other ones that I just mentioned. Those, if you just double them, double the size of your chicken breast, double the size of your turkey burger, double the size of your eggs, whatever the case might be, that's going to fill you up so much that the sides on your plate, and we'll go over an athlete's perfect plate another episode as well, so stay tuned. But this is going to, just doubling your protein really goes a long way. The other thing that I think is really cool at our house is, with our kids, we talk about, did you eat protein with every meal? So if you're having a meal, I think a lot of people will kind of fall into I eat most of my protein with dinner because my dinner is my sit down, make it. I have a rounded meal of meat, carbs, and vegetables or fruits or whatever. And that's your most balanced meal throughout your day. But every single time that you eat, you should be thinking, what in this serving is protein? And I love what we've talked about with the kids is the kids will actually point out and they'll ask questions. What's the protein in my meal today? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And they'll constantly know that they need to have protein in every meal, and that is something that we've kind of fundamentally set with them because that is going to help them in all of their development and everything else. Now, obviously, we want to balance, and we'll talk about the other two here in a second, but protein being the most difficult for everyone, we always start there. We always concentrate on that. And I think we're under eating protein just as a country. And so that's going to be a big part of, and lean protein, meaning not adding a bunch of fat with that protein. So
another thing I noticed with FTP too is when my athletes start their breakfast later in the day, so their breakfast is their lunch, they have a hard time catching up. So those of you who don't eat protein in the morning, that's another tip, is to just start eating something just small. Maybe it is just a protein bar. You guys, there's so many protein bars out there nowadays that taste so good, like candy bars. I mean, and they make breakfast ones too. So blueberry, anything. So start with one of those or half of a protein shake. Like you don't have to go all or nothing. It's like baby steps to get you where you need to be. But another tip would be don't wait until like 11 o'clock to start eating your protein because that will be a hard 8-9 hours whenever you go to bed to get that in. And it's not fun to, at the end of the day, have to get
And
your
you'll be
protein in.
stuffed,
It's
too.
yeah, right.
Those are never, the protein's never the snack right before you go to bed that's like, oh, you know what I really want is a chicken breast right now.
Right.
And then I'll go to bed in 15 minutes, right? It's always something sweet, it's whatever. But
it's weird though, like I would love that at night. Like I love protein. And I've just over the years, I just know when I don't get enough protein and I just crave, like, no pun intended, protein. And it's weird. So once you guys start building that foundation and that habit, it will get a lot easier. But do those two things for sure.
Definitely. So the second macronutrient that we're going to talk about out of the three today is carbs. And I think carbs in diet culture get the worst rep because there's so many diets that are just, hey, let's cut out an entire macronutrient group. And if you do that, your body is fundamentally runs on carbs. And so back to my car analogy, if your car needs gasoline, carbs are the gasoline for your car, for your body. And so that is the energy source that your body and most importantly your brain prefers. Now, your body is super, super cool. So it will make carbohydrates out of excess protein. If you're not eating enough carbs and you have too much protein, your body actually goes through glycolysis, protein glycolysis, I think is what it's called. It's been a while since I've refreshed up on my scientific terms, but that's not important. Basically what it is your body isn't getting enough energy from carbs and will pull protein and amino acids, break them down and turn them into energy, which turns them into glycogen, and that's what your body runs on. So knowing how many carbs your ideal energy is, and also when to time them throughout the day when you need the most energy is super important. And so carbs is always kind of the leftover in when we're calculating someone's macros. That's the third one that we calculate because it's just kind of, here's the leftover calories, eat them all as carbs because you need the energy, especially when you're training like an athlete. That's going to be where the performance comes. And unfortunately in, like I said, diet culture and all of the social media, all the different diets that are out there, there's a lot of fear mongering when it comes to carbs. They're not bad, period. I was going to say full stop. That's what the kids say, I feel like right now.
I don't know what that means either, but
I don't think it has a meaning.
I don't think so.
We can get into that another time too. But the body needs carbs, bottom line. And so when we calculate them, the problem with carbs though is that it's very easy to overeat carbs. Reason being is a lot of carb sources, which every carb that you eat is ultimately going to get broken down into glycogen, but there's very high processed simple carbs, which are like sugar, which don't fill you up at all. And so if you only ate carbs all day, you could eat a shitload of carbs and barely be full. And I think that that's also a reason why people overeat and overeat carbs in particular, is because if I just sat down and ate a bunch of sweet sugar
Halloween
type
candy,
of
I'm thinking of the
candy.
Halloween bowl.
Yes.
I could eat the whole thing if I don't have any protein or anything.
Yeah, and that's the crazy part is the Halloween candy, an Airhead is pure sugar, pure glycogen, which is the chemical breakdown that your body needs, but it only needs so much. And then what happens is if you have too much, it's swimming around in your bloodstream and then gets stored as body fat, which then gets can be distributed later because your body stores it thinking that, hey, we're going to use this when we don't have the energy, that when we're starving and not eating enough carbs, we're going to use this energy, right? And so that is why having that number is so important, and sticking with that number is so important because overeating it is super, super easy. Carb sources, very, very simple. This is most things. I mean, we'll have carbs. Potatoes, fruit has carbs the nice thing about fruit is there's so much micronutrients, which again, we're not going to touch on as much today, but they're worth the carbs most of the time. So it's not like you can overeat fruit. So I see a lot of fear mongering around fruit as well. Like, oh, I can't eat a banana or grapes or whatever because it has so many carbs in it. And yes, it has carbs in it, but the offset to how good it is for you micronutrient wise, you're not going to eat too much fruit. What you could eat too much carbs from is chips. And a lot of the high processed foods that you will eat are like predominantly carbs, also fat, but predominantly carbs, and it doesn't fill you up. So what I like to think about as carbs is a tip is get whole carbs that will fill you up. So like potato chips are not going to fill you up as much as a potato, right? You know, whole grain foods take more for your body to break down. Ultimately, it ends up being the exact same thing in glycogen, but your body has to do more breaking it down to get that glycogen out of it. And then also think of things, if you match up fiber, again, this is a different conversation, but carbs higher in fiber are going to also be just more satiating, which makes you more full. And so those type of things are what I recommend eating, but I never steer someone away from a carb source that they do love. An Airhead, if it fits in your numbers, is fine. That's the thing, that knowing your number is great. If you're at your number and you're going to eat a bunch of Halloween candy, that's not going to be great because now you're overeating, you're eating in a surplus, you're going to gain weight and gain body fat. Now, if you're 30 carbs under and you eat 10, I don't know the exact macros, the number of sugars in a small Airhead or whatever, but I'm going to eat 10 Airheads and that's going to make up my 30 carbs that I can have, then that's fine. You don't have to worry about it. And that's why I love flexible nutrition and knowing your macros, because you, just like a bank budget, you can spend.
Budget? What's a budget?
Yeah, tell me about that. That's another conversation for another day. But just like a bank budget, if you have that money sitting there that you've allotted to spend, you can spend it. And so same thing with your carbs. If you have 50 carbs there and you do want some extra carbs in the form of a sucker, candy, you know, whatever the case might be, you know, animal crackers. There's so many carbs.
You're thinking about the food the kids have at home right now.
That's literally what I've been naming off what I've been eating nonstop the last like 2 weeks.
And that's one thing in the FTP group we'll do. So every Monday night we have a call and someone will get on and talk about tortillas. And they're like, oh, well, are these bad because they have carbs? And so there's this mindset around the only food group that I hear about being bad is carbs. When people ask a question about something, oh, banana, is that bad? And nothing is bad, right? Like Tyler said, nothing is bad as long as you fit it within your macronutrients that you're supposed to have. So if you want to fill it up one day with bananas and Skittles, fine, but just know that you hit that limit and you can't have any more, but you're going to be hungry. And I just think if we can change the mindset around this isn't restrictive. Like, we still want you to enjoy foods that you want to eat to be successful, because if you completely remove something and just give people plans, like a meal plan, you're going to fail. And so this is just eat the carbs that you like, but it's all in moderation, because we're a world where now we eat in surplus, and that's when we gain weight. It's just bringing it back to moderation.
And it's very interesting. There was actually a study done by a guy, I want to say Stanford, but I'm probably wrong on that, where he wanted to prove that I can be healthy if I just eat my allotted calories and my allotted macros with he used Twinkies. And so it became, the study was the Twinkie diet. And basically all he did was he supplemented his micronutrients with like multivitamins. So he on the health side of things, he got what he needed there. He supplemented his protein with like protein shakes. And then all he ate was Twinkies. And he literally, after, I think it was like a 2-3 month study, he got all of his blood panels, all of his health markers, all of his body composition measured. He lost a bunch of weight, and I'll find the link to the study and link it down below, but he lost a bunch of weight, and a lot of his cholesterol numbers, a lot of his blood markers that are like health blood markers, they got better. And so it's amazing to think that, now that's an extreme. I wouldn't recommend mimicking that study, but the study was put out there in order to prove that you can have flexibility, and, you know, eating a donut in moderation, that's not the problem. The problem is eating 25 donuts consistently for every single day on top of normal food.
Right.
And then now you're in a surplus. That surplus is what's crushing that nutrition. And so carbs, energy, the fuel, right? So the third one that we're going to talk about is fat. Now, to go back, carbs are also 4 calories per gram. And so when you eat 100 grams of carbohydrates, you're eating 400 calories, period. Done. And so then getting into fat. Fat is most helpful when it comes to kind of, I always like to think about it as the hormone helper. It's going to regulate a lot of your systems. It's going to help with hormones. And so you need healthy fats in your diet. And so that's why we then have an allotted number for how much fat we need during a day. Fats, again, come from a lot of different sources. A lot of things that taste really, really good are just predominantly fat and carbs because you cook them in a fat source and it makes them taste so much better. So if you guys have ever had plain baked potato and then you've had a loaded baked potato with butter, bacon, cheese, sour cream, all of that, all you're adding to that carb is a whole bunch of fat, and it is delicious. So good. But it's also packed with more calories as well. So a gram of fat, and we're talking dietary fat. Dietary fat is much different than body fat. So we have to separate the two. I always think that it's very confusing to the general population. And if you don't have an education in nutrition, it's tough because it's the same word. So I would love to have that be different words, but ultimately it is what it is. But they are different in definition, right? So if we're eating body fat, or if we're, see, I just made the mistake.
You just confused the
If
whole
we're eating
world.
dietary fat, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going straight to body fat. Now,
unless you eat too much.
Right, it can, but body fat is, again, only the storage of calories when you're in a surplus. If you're overeating, that's when you gain body fat. Dietary fat, you can have dietary fat, and you need to have dietary fat every single day. And if you eat the right numbers and you're not eating in a surplus, you're not going to gain body fat. So what are some healthy fat sources? I'm not a huge dietary fat guy. I don't like
avocado,
which are
avocados, not avocados.
I'm an avocado guy.
Avocados, so good. Yeah, I can like guacamole. I mean, cheese is huge.
Yep.
Peanut butter, any nuts. So what I love to see is when somebody says, "Oh, you need protein, eat nuts." And I'm like, don't eat the nuts, because the protein ratio in those compared to the fat is not worth it. So nuts are not a good source of protein. And if anybody tells you otherwise, they're full of bullshit. So watch the fat because they're high fat. So avocados, nuts, I mean, even your cooking oils, like extra virgin olive oil and things like that, those add up so quick. Dairy, so obviously vitamin D milk, and milk's heavier creamer. Some of those creamers can have a ton of fat in them. And this is one in my FTP group, everybody's over their fat because a little bit, that's the macronutrient, that's the least amount, and it adds up because it's super dense, right? So think of a tablespoon of peanut butter, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. When you measure that out, it's not very much.
And you also get to go back to the calories, sorry to interrupt, but you have 9 calories per 1 gram of fat. And so it's a higher caloric value for 1 gram of fat. So if I eat 100 gram of fat, I'm not getting 400 like I am with my protein and my carbs. I'm getting 900 calories with my grams of fat.
And if you're not tracking and you hear like, this is a healthy fat, avocados, people just assume that they do a lot of good for the body with their micronutrients or whatever. So I'll never forget, I had a client, an athlete, come to me, and her fat was like 110 grams a day. Because on the internet, going back to people not being educated, and it's fine, that's why we're here to help. But she was like, well, I read that avocados are really healthy for you, for omega or nuts or whatever, for omegas and this and salmon. And so she was eating it because she read that it was good for you and she thought it was healthy. But then when you're overeating 100, or she was probably overeating 50 grams of fat every day, which is how many calories? Like that adds up. And so she didn't know why she was gaining all this weight when she was eating all these healthy things. And so there's such a disconnect of the balance of it all, right? And so fats are good, but they will make you fat if you eat a lot of fat because of the surplus in calories too.
Yeah.
So
and the benefits of fat, obviously we talked about like regulation systems and hormones and all those type of things. But the other thing is fats will help you feel more full. And so like some people are like, I'm cutting all fats out and I'm just going to go fat-free diet. And so, because there's a lot of that in the grocery store, right? Which is not, it's a good tool, but you still need some fat. So if you try to cut out all fats and go on that kind of diet, again, you need some of those healthy fats. And so someone that is like super low fat that I might work with, I would recommend at least supplementing like a fish oil and getting your healthy omegas, which again is just a type of fat. It's broken down more, and we'll get into science of it and stuff another time. But the thought of I'm not going to eat any fat is not the answer at all. And so having the right amount, again, hitting your number of fat is the ideal outcome for you, because you're then, if you hit your protein, your carbs, and your fat numbers, you're hitting your calorie numbers, which, depending on what your goal is, if your goal is to lose body fat, now you're going to be in a deficit of overall calories burned versus calories consumed, and that's going to be what helps you lose body fat. Now, again, breaking those down, ratio, that's the word I was looking for earlier. So we did find that out. So ratio, having the right ratio is what's the key to performance and making sure that you're hitting all of those bases. When, calories is the first umbrella. If you're eating at your calories and then you stop there and you're just tracking calories, that's a really good start, because you know what you're going to eat as far as calories. And if you eat more than what you burn, you're going to gain weight. If you eat less than what you burn, you're going to lose weight. If you have that maintenance, and then you're going to stay the same. And that's some people's goal as well. And so we will find out what your goal is and assign macros accordingly. Yeah. And so some of the other things, finding your balance is huge. One, knowing your number, knowing what your budget is. Because again, going back to the bank budget is a very difficult thing to stay on track with if you don't even know what's going out or what's coming in. If you never look at your bank numbers, it's very hard to stay on budget. So knowing what you're eating, tracking, and knowing what you're expelling and using every day is the necessary stats that you have to know. And so finding that balance and knowing your numbers is huge. I would always recommend working with a coach, because it's very easy to get your numbers. It's very difficult to adjust your numbers, or when to adjust your numbers. And it's very difficult to understand the accountability behind doing it all the time, right? And so when you have a goal, get with that coach, get your numbers, and understand that hitting those numbers is not only going to help you with your goal if it's fat loss, but it's also going to, if you hit it in the right ratios, is going to help you perform when you're talking about like fitness goals or competition goals. If you're currently in a sport, or you're just trying to gain muscle or lift more or run a better K or half marathon or obstacle course race, whatever your goal is, the performance is dictated in the kitchen as well. So it's not just worrying about your body composition when it comes to the kitchen. It's worrying about performance. And so, and we'll go over we have a performance plate for athletes and kind of what that looks like. We'll go over that another time as well.
And I was just grocery shopping yesterday, and I was so thankful that I'm able to walk in the aisles and look at something and be like, I know the macros on it. And is it suitable for our family, for the kids? Because there's so much junk out there for kids nowadays. So just knowing like they like this, it's high protein, let's get it, right? And the people that don't understand it, they would be so confusing to go grocery shopping and just not have the awareness or know what's in some foods. And so FTP has been so beneficial for people when it comes to grocery shopping, because now they're finding more foods that have that ratio of protein, fats, and carbs, whereas before they didn't know. And what I love about this group too is it's a monthly group. You're not committing for a long time. We're going to have a promo coming up here for an 8-week FTP group. But after that 8 weeks, you can remove yourself from the group. I mean, I think I had 24 athletes join. 5 of them feel confident enough now to take this on their own and run with it and hold themselves accountable and know what food groups are what. And they have a really good, solid foundation. So now they've learned all these tools, all this information to be able to carry with them for the rest of their life. Because the great thing about macros is it doesn't change much. It doesn't go in trends, and so it sticks with you for the rest of your life to teach your kids to have a healthy balance versus finding these fads and these trends that are going on to be able just to live a consistent, healthy lifestyle. So they're going to remove themselves, which is fine. They're always welcome back if they feel that they fall off for the accountability factor. But then the other athletes, they're sticking it out and they need more because they want more education and more knowledge because they don't feel ready to go on their own yet. So it meets you where you're at. So if you get in and you learn everything in the first 8 weeks and you're good to go, you can remove. If you want to stay in for that accountability, you're more than welcome to stay. But every week, everyone in the group is constantly learning something.
Definitely. And it's really cool in a group like that, or, if you're working one-on-one with one of our coaches, just the education that continues, because you run into another thing. You run into a holiday, or you run into a new food at the grocery store that you want to try, and you try it and you realize that, okay, that is very, very high in fat. So now I need to chip away some fat, somewhere else. That continued education is really cool to see long term, just understanding. And like Amber and I we tracked for years and years and years, and rarely do we track all the time right now. And what we'll do is every once in a while, we'll, at least for me, and I think you're the same way, every once in a while we'll kind of go back to the drawing board because our perception of a serving of X, Y, or Z is slightly off again. And so then it's like, okay, well, we'll just track for a couple weeks, get all of our staple foods that we eat all the time back on track and dive back in. And so that is a nice reminder for us every time that, yes, we know what we eat and what it's comprised of macro-wise, but oftentimes we still need to get the scale out or, retrack some things to remind ourselves. And so the biggest thing, overall is keeping it simple, and you can do that a lot easier with a coach and asking those questions and all that kind of stuff. If you keep it simple, each meal should have protein, carbs, and fats in it. Now, again, some foods combine multiple macros. So like a steak, for example, is going to have some fat in it and it's going to have protein in it. Now, a steak's not going to have any carbs unless you add to it. Now your meal is going to have a potato. So you don't have to have, an actual avocado. You don't have to have an avocado. I like avocado more. Is there like a real way to say it?
I've always said avocado.
Okay.
But maybe it's avocado.
I don't know. That's how I've always said it. But you don't have to have a steak, an avocado, and a potato to have your protein, your fat, and your carb, because your protein is combined with the steak depending on what it is, right? And so that's where a lot of those combinations can be a little confusing, but keeping it simple, making sure that you're tracking all that. If you put in an app like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer, or there's several different apps out there, if you use one of those and you plug in what you're eating, the cool part is now you know what that food has in it. And so now you can make a decision with that budget to put something in or not put it in, or eat half of that much.
Or be like, I need Amber's FTP coaching group because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm here for you.
I love it. So the biggest thing too, with the keep it simple is you don't have to be perfect, right? And that's what another progression of people that are with the FTP group or with a one-on-one coach for a long time is you definitely don't start out perfect. And week 8, you're still not perfect, but you're consistently getting better each week. And you get down to week 16, you're 5 months in, you're 6 months in, and you're really, really close every single day now. And it's getting easier and easier and easier. And then you can make the decision to jump out of that coaching help for a while and then jump back in if you ever find yourself falling off again. But that education and that consistency is the key. Is we want to strive for consistency over perfection, because nobody's perfect. Everybody has a birthday party, everybody has a holiday, and those are things that there's a lot of things that I use as a coach is just, that's a human thing. So if we were all just like robots, we could just plug in the number and then only consume that amount of food for that. But we're not. We have a lot of other things going on as humans. And so there's other importance in holidays, in birthday parties, in having a cocktail, so how do we make those things fit? We still enjoy those things in order to make our lives overall better versus just, only worrying about macronutrients and worrying about health, and losing weight 100% of the time. Because when you start doing that, and I've had a lot of people that I've worked with that do get so locked into that they're like, yeah, I just feel depressed because I skipped 20 people's events this year and I have no friends anymore and I can't do anything. And there's other things that are important as a human that we should be doing. And so how does your nutrition fit in to work for you instead of against you and all of that?
Yeah. So coming up November 3rd, we are kicking off I got to put a plug in here.
Okay.
An 8-week
we'll pause
FTP.
for ads.
Yes. And this doesn't have to be sponsored. It's perfect. 'Cause
Yep.
It's us.
Yep.
So it's great.
Yep.
It's free. So FTP group with new one will kick off November 3rd. So this is going to be a great one because it's going to show you guys how to enjoy a holiday and still get results, because it's not one or nothing, right? I love, like he said, celebrations, going out with friends to have a drink if I want, going to Mexican, doing all the things. And so this is really going to be able to show you how to use a holiday to your benefit to fuel your body the right way, especially during a strength season, give us all the extra calories to move heavy weight and build the muscle. But it'll be really good. So it's going to go November 3rd. It's going to go for 8 weeks. I don't know the ending of that. And again, that one will be 8-week commitment to yourself. It's going to go so fast. You're going to learn so much. And then after those 8 weeks, you can continue with us on a month-to-month basis or just cancel. But we will have more promo coming up for you guys, ways to sign up. So highly encourage, if you listen to this, you're like, gosh, some of that's so relatable, I want to learn. We would love to have you join it and get knowledge and results. Like Tyler said, you're going to put your information in, you're going to learn, but like the way you feel. Like I've had so many testimonials from my athletes that are like, I never thought I could lose weight. And here I was eating more calories than I ever thought possible, because that's it. We're not going to put you in a 500 calorie deficit or 500 calories like macros, right? Like they're going to be higher than what the average person thinks. But when you figure out what group they need to go in, you're eating a lot. You feel full. You don't feel hungry. And just
the ratio. Yeah.
Losing body fat, feeling better, clothes fitting better. Those are all the things that we're striving for. And so join the group. You won't regret it.
This is like, and again, to plug that a little bit, this is the best 8 weeks to join a group like this or a coach, because this is where a ton of people fall off. The holidays are coming off and they get discouraged because they feel like they're failing because they're trying to stick to a strict diet of some sort, and they don't have the tools necessary to go into the holidays and be successful, both with their nutrition and with their social responsibilities and what and having fun and doing those things. And so it's a really cool opportunity this 8 weeks specifically to put those things to the test and go out, take advice, know as much and have as many tools going into a Thanksgiving, which Thanksgiving is like, people dread Thanksgiving because it's an eating holiday, but it is
Best
historically
macronutrient
like the best macro
holiday.
ratio holiday. Like I can eat, now I overeat Thanksgiving, and so I have to think about that when I'm thinking about the rest of my week that week. But you ultimately, the amount of food and the ratio of food that you're eating, you're typically high protein, you're typically doing some really cool stuff and delicious things. And so those meals that people like worry about when they're dieting, those can be to your advantage. And I double eat, and then I hit a tough leg day the next day and feel like Superman in the gym because I have all of the fuel necessary, all of the building blocks necessary to be successful.
Yeah, and it's a weird season because you let Thanksgiving go by and then you're like, Christmas is coming up. So even Halloween now, and then we already look for the new year. Well, when the new year starts, I'm going to do this. When the new year starts, and like you just wasted 3 months of poor eating, gaining maybe 10 pounds in those 3 months or whatever, 5 to 15, where you could be losing. And it's such a mental mind shift of like, why do we got to wait till the new year? Don't do that to yourself. Start now. You're going to realize you don't have to restrict that much. It's not that bad. And then you're going to move into the new year already ahead of all these people who are just waiting for that new year to come to make a change. Like, don't wait. Just get started.
Love it. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Remember, you're an athlete. Live like it.